Hello, everyone. Welcome to our bi-weekly Sutra discussion with the Venerable monks and nuns living in North America. So it is a great joy to have all the Venerables and some of our lay devotees on the Zoom platform. So let us begin our session by paying respect and homage to the Buddha. Let us recite Namo Tassa 3 times together. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. I pay my respect and homage to him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened Buddha. Great. Dear friends in Dhamma, before we get into the discussion of today's sutta, I would like to introduce our venerable monks. Actually, today we don't have nuns. I normally send the invitation to everyone. So whoever is free, I think all the monastics have their own programs, even sometimes on weekdays free. But whoever is here, I'm very grateful to all the venerable monks and our lay people who are here in the Zoom platform. So I would like to introduce the venerable monks to our audience. We have Venerable Bhante Pesala joining the discussion all the way from Sri Lanka. It's early in the morning, 3:30 a.m. So thank you, Venerable Pesala, for joining the discussion. Then we have Venerable Sarnapala Thero joining the discussion from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And then we have Venerable Bhante Mystica Kamala Siri joining the discussion from Minnesota, United States. Bhante, today I see a beautiful background of the sunset with the snow with Metta Meditation Center. It's a beautiful background. I had to acknowledge it. And then we have Venerable Ananda Kalubovila joining the discussion from Cambridge, Ontario, Canada. Then we have Bhante Varapanyo joining the discussion from, I don't know, you normally travel, Venerable Varapanyo. Where are you joining from today?
Well, right now I'm joining from Delaware.
Delaware,
Yeah.
United States. Wonderful. And then we have Venerable Trudell joining the discussion from Florida, United States. Then we have Venerable Digale Somavangsha joining the discussion from Vancouver, British Columbia. And then we have Venerable Shanta Sobana joining the discussion from the Hollywood, Los Angeles, United States. So I would like to give a very respectful welcome to all the venerable monks. Thank you for joining the discussion today, and your insights will be greatly appreciated by our audience. I also would like to give a warm welcome to our lay friends who are joining the discussion on Zoom platform. Welcome to the bi-weekly Sutra discussion. And also, I would like to give a warm welcome to our friends who are watching this bi-weekly Sutra discussion on Zoom, on YouTube, and Facebook Live. So those who are watching on Facebook and YouTube, if you don't mind, I would like to kindly encourage all of you to share this program with on your social media timelines for the greater benefit of your friends and colleagues. The opportunities of freedom or grounds for freedom, and it was recommended by Bhante Pesala. And so today I thought I should have the discussion.
Okay, thank you, Venerable. I hope everyone can hear me okay.
Yeah,
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to kind of give a synopsis and start out our session together. Um, I thought this was quite an interesting sutta to look at, and when I first approached it, I wasn't fully. It was kind of difficult for me to understand what exactly was being emphasized or pointed to here. But eventually, after a few readings, it became quite clear and quite simple about the Dhamma in this and the truth in this teaching. So, as many suttas were geared towards or focused towards, it's kind of speaking directly to monastics, speaking to the bhikshus. But in the modern world, and especially in this situation, it's really talking about any practitioner, anyone who is on the path and is hoping to go in the direction of liberation and kind of this freedom from suffering. So, just to give a quick synopsis of this sutta, it's talking about the five opportunities for freedom, or the five access points, the five direct access points for liberation, for enlightenment, to kind of go the full way. So, what five are those? And these are for any of us, whether we are a monk or just a layperson, a normal person, these are the five opportunities, the five avenues to wake up, to walk the path, to free oneself from suffering and this world of samsara. So, firstly, it is a teacher or a respected spiritual companion. We could almost say a quite successful, even enlightened being. And so, listening to a teacher and getting to receive the teaching. So, to hear the teaching from this teacher, from this enlightened teacher, that is an opportunity to become free. Right? This is an opportunity for freedom. This is an access point for the real true path. And as usual in these sutras, it repeats itself. There's a formula that's there, and each one of these five opportunities for freedom has as a part of it this formula, this explanation of kind of how things go. Um, so maybe I'll read the first one directly, the sutta,
Yeah,
and
that would be nice.
and then for the rest of them we don't need to read it directly. They all follow the same formula, and I'll just point out the main information that's different by each of these five ways to access freedom, these five opportunities. Um, so, firstly, the first opportunity, the teacher or a respected spiritual companion teaches the Dhamma to a mendicant, to a practitioner on the path. That mendicant, that practitioner, feels inspired by the meaning and the teaching in that Dhamma, so in that truth, no matter how the teacher or respected spiritual companion teaches it. And I think this is there's something very direct in there that uh, a lot of times we get really stuck in a particular way, a particular style of teaching. But here it says repeatedly, it doesn't matter how the teacher or respected spiritual companion teaches it. It's just that it's being taught, it's being conveyed, it's being shared. It doesn't really matter how it's being conveyed, right? So some people would even say, oh my gosh, you're teaching the Dhamma on YouTube or
Mm,
TikTok or Facebook, but it doesn't really matter. But it's that we feel inspired by the meaning and the teaching in that Dhamma, in that presentation of the teacher's experience. So, feeling inspired, joy springs up. Being joyful, rapture springs up. When the mind is full of rapture, the body becomes tranquil. When the body is tranquil, one feels bliss. And when blissful, the mind becomes immersed in samadhi. This is the first opportunity for freedom. If a mendicant or if a practitioner stays diligent, keen, and resolute at this time, their mind is freed, their defilements are ended, and they arrive at the supreme sanctuary. They arrive at Nibbana. So I'll just touch the other four opportunities for freedom that are listed in the sutra. So the first is to receive, to hear the teachings from a teacher or a respected companion, a spiritual friend. Secondly, it is to teach, right? It's actually talking about here about a monk or a mendicant in teaching and expressing the Dhamma, that in doing that, they can be, according to what they've learned and what they've memorized, that monk in teaching can be inspired in that Dhamma, and so can feel inspired, joyful, rapture, and can lead to Nibbana. Thirdly, it may be a recitation of a teaching. So it may be that we're reciting a sutra, maybe we're reading it or we've memorized it, we've learned it, and we're reciting it. So in that reciting of the sutra, no matter how it's recited, um, it, we may feel inspired. Joy will spring up, rapture will spring up, tranquility, bliss, the third opportunity for freedom. Fourthly, that we may just be thinking about considering the teaching in our heart. And in that thinking about the teaching and bringing it into our heart, examining it closely as we've understood it, as we've learned it, we may feel inspired by the meaning and teaching. And this is a fourth opportunity for freedom. And fifthly, it may be that we take up a meditation subject. So a meditation subject as a foundation of immersion of our focus is properly grasped, attended to, born in the mind, and comprehended with wisdom. And by getting involved in that meditation subject, in our meditation, we can feel inspired by the meaning and the teaching in that Dhamma. And this can lead us once again to a doorway or an access point for our freedom. Yeah, so that's the introduction to this sutta. It can come across as a little bit complicated, difficult to understand, but actually it's very clear. It's very simple, direct teachings in this sutra.
Yeah, thank you, Bante Varapanyo, for giving the synopsis of this sutta. I think, yeah, when we read the sutta for the first time, and it seems a bit complicated. What is this all about? But when we carefully examine, then it becomes very clear. I guess it has a purpose. And now the main theme here is vimukti in Pali, or in Sanskrit vimukti, and the noun, another word could be moksha. That's the well-known word. That means liberation or freedom. So I think we human beings, our social beings, are trying to gain this liberation, this freedom. And when we talk about the vimutti in the Dhamma, taught by the Buddha, that is from the cycle of life, or the freedom from suffering, that is nirvana or nibbana. And let us get into the discussion the way we understand the significance of the sutta, and how can we make it simple. Maybe, this is a collective reflection we are doing together, and I know in this group we have a very learned community of the monks. We all read the sutras, we have been teaching, and in fact uh, when we look at the first one, teaching the Dhamma to the people, how it could inspire others. Even during the COVID time, we continue to conduct this bi-weekly sutra discussion. Now it has been more than 2 years. We discussed a lot. I know there are a lot of people who greatly appreciated this and still continue to appreciate this program. And so we have Bante Ananda from Cambridge, Canada, raised his hand. And Bante Ananda, please feel free to expand on this sutta and make it very simple for people to understand. Venerable Ananda.
Thank you, Bante. Teruvan Sarnai, and greetings to all the venerables and everyone else who's listening here. Bante, in fact, it was very nice. I think we are on the right track when Bante Varapanja mentioned that we need to sort of decode it and make it simpler. So I think the first time when I started reading it, I took the Sinhala version, and then when I started reading it, it did not make any sense at all. It was like very gibberish. So then I thought, how could we sort of break it down and make it more clear? I think to start with the language, uh, at least the Sutra Central is more on a more modern language, but if you refer to Sinhala language versions, they are very archaic. The language used is in the 50s language, so it's sort of hard to comprehend that language. But then again, I think reading sutras over time, you started developing this sense of identifying different patterns. And I think that's a very easy way to break it down. So if you look at the Sutra, Anguttara Nikaya, it appears on the Panchangika Vaggu, which means that with 5 factors. So if you look into the other sutras above and beyond, I always do that. I always do that to see if there's a connection between the previous one and the next one. So with the 5 factors, Panchangika Vagga means Buddha preaches, or his discourse is all about with 5 factors. So the next one, Panchangika Samadhi Sutta, discuss about 5 Samadhi elements, and Chankamani Sanskrit, so on. So I think that's an interesting way to look at it. Certain similarity, they are grouped in the same Vagga because they have similarities. So if you can understand one sutta, read the one above or below might give you some insight. Sometimes it might be completely different. Majjhima Nikaya, if you take the first one and the second one, they are totally contrasting. So that is something we can be mindful of. And I think the next thing is that there are certain there's a set of words which are continuously repeating in repetition. You can see that pattern. For example, in this one, this sutta, it says if a mendicant is diligent, keen, and resolute. Diligent, keen, and resolute. Appamattassa atapino pahitatassa viharatu. So I think you find that in many other places also. And in other instances, we find um, what do you call viveka cha priti sukha, no, not that one. So you need to be in a seclusion. I can't remember the exact word, but you find so many patterns like that. And in this one, it's diligent, keen, and resolute. So that appears in many places. And the next fact is that we are talking about five ways of emancipation or liberation, and at the same time, like Bhante Varapanya mentioned, there's a repetition, and sometimes this repetition becomes too overwhelming. You get lost in the main point while trying to read through this repetition. So what sometimes I do is I take it down and then I remove the repeated parts and then focus on the main parts. But in order to do that, first you need to identify the repetition. So in this one, the repetition is that once a medicant is feeling inspired by the meaning and the teaching of the Dhamma, which is Atta Patisamveda, Dhamma Patisamveda, and then he will be inspired, and then based on that inspiration, the joy springs up. It will lead to rapture. Rapture will lead to tranquility, tranquility to bliss, and then blissful to samadhi. And it's also very interesting now. Bhikkhu Bodhi, Bhikkhu Sujato, everyone is doing a fantastic job on trying to translate it. But I think it's a very hard thing because there could be so many nuances and so many interpretations. And I think this very forum, we are trying to come up with the interpretation that we can give to this forum. So I also remember that in Sri Lanka, there's this network called Sirasa TV. their tagline goes as "We report, you decide." So this is sort of a reporting of our nuances, our interpretations. So the pattern here is that we have this pattern. Once Buddha says about 5 ways of liberation, emancipation, and right after each one, there's a phrase which keeps on repeating. So that's inspired, joy, rapture, tranquil, and bliss, and then samadhi. And why I said that we report usually side is because Bhikkhu Bodhi hasn't translated the word samadhi. And if you get to the fifth point, it becomes very hard. What exactly is samadhi? I remember a couple of weeks, a couple of sessions ago, we even had the sort of different ideas about what samadhi is. Is it concentration? Is it something else, etc. So in this translation, the word samadhi has been left purposely without interpreting that, while all the other are translated to English like joy, rapture, etc. But then again, if you look at this pattern, you find this pattern in some other places also. Uh, for example, I will say it in Sinhala. Amuditassa priti jayati, priti manassa kayo passambati, passadda kayo sukang vediti, sukino chittang samadhyati. You find that pattern also in other places like the Sattis Bodhipakshika Dharma, the Bodhipakya Dhamma, and specifically on the 7 factors of Bodhi, Satsambojjhanga, 7 factors of awakening. So in that you find Sati Sambojjhanga, Dhamma Vichaya, Viriya, Piti Sambojjhanga, Passadhi Sambojjhanga, Samadhi, and Upekka, 7 factors of awakening. And the Piti, Passadhi, and Samadhi appears very close in that format also. So I think the interesting point we can take is that these are different expositions of Buddha's dialogues. So it has been told to different people in under different circumstances, under different pariyaya or expositions. So if we are familiar with the rest of the suttas, we can sort of see the connection between certain things appearing here and there. And so that is my contribution to how to decode it, because I think when we try to read Tripitaka, that's the hardest thing. How do you get to the main point without getting overwhelmed with so much information and so many terminology? But once you get used to the terminology and the patterns, it becomes simpler. So then you can break it down. And my commentary on the second part, which is the discourse, is that we are ended up with 5 parts of Vimukta Ayatana, or Vimukta Ayatana, as in how the 5 sort of formats or parts of liberation. And I think it's very interesting because each person has their own individual learning style. And if I relate to this, when I got ordained, there were some other monks who got ordained with me, and out of them, I am the last one to listen to Dhamma on a YouTube or on a recorded thing, because I believe that I am ADHD. Looking at the DSM 5, I clearly fit in the ADH category, and because of that, it's very hard for me to concentrate on a teaching which runs over a few hours. But on the other hand, I find I'm much better in reading, and I'm much better in teaching also. So then comes the next part that I remember when I taught in a couple of universities in Sri Lanka. And then one thing, one of my teachers told me that if you are getting ready for a lecture of 2 hours, spend about 10 20 hours on preparation. So again, you have this thing in universities, we call it kuppiya, where someone who's good at it teaches the other students about a subject. And one interesting thing is when you have to teach, you have to learn much more. You have to be very confident. You have to be very clear about the subject you are going to talk, and you need to draw these parallels, the connections, and you need to map it out in your head. So I think the second part, what Buddha says as a vimukta ayatana, about teaching someone, according to what you have understood, gives a nice way of vimukta ayatana, and it also gives you this feeling once you are teaching, you'll come up with certain ideas which you didn't understand before. So I think that's a fantastic thing. And then there's reciting, and I would take reciting and the second one, which is even a little similar to reciting, the reflection. When you live with something in your head, say that back in the day, I when I ran my business, it was always on my head what to do next. So I was thinking what to do next, even while I'm traveling, while I'm driving. So there are certain things come naturally when you have that, on your mind. So the same thing applies for Buddhism also, because you are supposed to be diligent, you are supposed to be working on your vimukta ayatana. So when that happens, I think certain things which you are not aware usually would come to you. So that's a third one. But I think the biggest problem lies on the fifth point, samadhi. How can we take a samadhi nimit? What is mentioned here is immersion, a meditation subject as foundation of immersion is properly grasped, attended, borne in mind, and comprehended with wisdom. And if you look at the Sinhala part, it says a samadhi nimitta, and you keep thinking about it and having a proper grasp of it. I think that's a very difficult thing to interpret. But the first four are much more straightforward and can be related. And I think it would be nice if another Bhante can also explain on the fifth point, elaborate on that.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante Ananda, for expanding more on the teachings, some steps found in the Vimutti Ayatana Sutta. And I think it will be much convenient for the audience to understand if we can expand more on these teachings in practical way, I guess. Now, the practicality is actually mentioned in the sutta, right at the beginning of the sutta. Anyone who is looking for vimukti, the freedom from suffering or release from the cycle of life to realize nibbana, the mendicant or the practitioner, let's say, although Buddha is giving this discourse to a group of monks, but it doesn't really have to be a group of monks. When he uses the word bhikkhu, meaning it could be bhikkhu, bhikkhuni, upasaka, upasika, all the communities. Any individual can benefit from this teaching, and anyone can realize this nibbana or attain this liberation. But the practitioner has to have some special qualities. I think those are mentioned in the sutta, like three qualities: appamatta, atapi, pahitatta. The practitioner has to be diligent, very keen, and very resolute. And so, and then when Buddha talks of vimutti is also what he's referring to is also mentioned right at the beginning. Is the mind is freed. It's called avimuttang va chittang vimuchyate. The mind which has not been liberated now becomes liberated. And then the defilements are ended. Aparikkhina va asava parikkhayan gachanti. So the defilements or the taints which have not been eradicated, and through these teachings, by doing these 5 steps, will help to eradicate those defilements. And then ananupattang va anuttarang yoga kemang anupapunati. They arrive at the supreme sanctuary, safety. If you haven't found the safety sanctuary before, now you can get there. So I think vimutti is being referred to those teachings in the Pali phrases that we use there. And so now let us try to understand that and see how we can help the audience to grasp the meaning of these 5 steps or 5 opportunities, 5 grounds of liberation. So we have Bhante Shantasobana from Los Angeles raised his hand. And Bhante Shantasobana, please feel free to enlighten us.
Oh, thank you very much, Venerable Sirs. And actually, thank you so much bringing this sutra today,
Yeah.
because it is one of very beautiful sutra, especially nowadays. A lot of people practice meditation, and at the same time, a lot of people into this spiritual practice. And so, one thing we have to understand, so when it comes to wisdom, that talk in Buddhism is more different than this uh, moral discipline that we talk in this conventional world.
Mm.
So here, nowadays, the meditation became one of the major subject in the world, and especially after the COVID. So there are a lot of people keep coming to practice,
Mm.
and it is at the same time what is happening, and we are getting into some kind of like some kind of meaning crisis, like we have economic crisis, health crisis. Now we are
All
getting
kinds of
into kind of
crisis.
like a very meaning crisis, because getting to the real meaning is very, so that's why bringing this kind of sutra and having this kind of conversation is very important for the audience also,
Mm.
because they can get into the right meaning. So
Yeah.
when it comes to the Vimuttayatana Sutta, if we break down the words, that the very adjective that the Vimukta means the adjective, and Vimukti means the noun.
Mm.
So Vimukti means the liberation or the freedom. So the ayatana is it's a kind of like the ground or the basis.
Mm-hmm.
So mostly when it come to nowadays in this conventional life, and in generations to generations, people struggle for freedom. And that freedom, mostly they think about finding that whatever they want to gain out of these sensual desires, whatever I can gain, if I have ability to gain whatever I want, I think I am free.
Mm.
But in the spiritual spectrum, it is totally different.
Mm.
So understanding these two things is because mostly conventional life people think that maintaining, controlling, and overtaking this conventional world is a kind of like a freedom.
Mm.
But here, what it's saying, that if you look for the liberation, you have to find a way to overcome the very mechanism of the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind.
Mm.
These five, these six senses.
Mm.
And if I bring a story, there was a young boy went to India.
Uh-huh.
There was a yoga farm, and he was practicing there. And then by the time he used to get into the farming, and every day he start to develop a kind of like a very nice garden. So one day the teacher came, and the teacher asked, "How is your practice keep going?" "Oh, I'm doing very well." "And how is your farm?" "Oh, my farm is so good. It is going, getting more better."
Uh-huh.
So then one day teacher went there and looked around, and the farm was so nice, everything green.
Mm.
And so then the teacher asked, "Oh, it looks so beautiful, everything green. How this possible?" So I take care, and the student told, every day early in the morning, when I wake up, the very first thing I do, I take out all the dry leaves.
Mm.
So then the teacher told, evergreen is only marketing word. You will never find evergreen world around us. So
Uh,
you have to develop the mind to understand the nature as it is, rather than overtaking the nature the way you want.
mm.
So dharma is a kind of like a way that giving ability for us to understand the nature as it is,
Mm.
not the to overtake the nature and controlling the nature. So in that way, that here, the when it come to our eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, so wherever the eye arise, and wherever the eye object arise, and the eye contact going to happen. When the eye contact's there, the eye consciousness going to arise. So that is a worldly nature, and no one can escape from that. But if the person hold it as I am, it is me, in that way what will happen, that person always develop the self-centered egocentric mind. So in that way it develop the samsara. So when it comes to this, that if the person have the ability to understand this mechanism, then that person will get out of the circle. So how that it can happen? And so there are many ways, that especially that here mentioned about the listening to the Dhamma, and teaching the Dhamma, reciting the Dhamma, and reflecting the Dhamma, and the meditation. So when it comes to that, what that means is, in one way, what I understanding here, because when we kind of like practice ourselves, we use a different language for us, and when we teach to others, when we explain it to others, we use a different language. So it is a two different ways. But when it comes to ourselves, when we practice, and it gives us a kind of like a way, if we tune to the Dhamma in any ways, it gives us ability to get into the flow. So that flow means it get out of the thinking mind, but to experience being mind. So when we come to the being mind, what will happen? Our mental proliferation, or this mental fluxes start to slow down, and as a result of that, we are tuned to, we are able to get into the true nature. So in that way, we are capable to understand how things come to be as they are. So what we need to understand, that most of time, because we think that whatever that the way we practice is the way, and other ways not going to work. But when it comes to these sutras, it's not like that. In many ways, people can get into to the liberation or the freedom. So when it comes to that, the very basic principle we have to understand, because mostly when we practice ourselves, sometimes we become so comfortable and we so attached, we get caught up within our own practice. And then we forget the outside, and we develop our point of view or the egocentric mind. It's kind of like this. And when I hold this cup, and I think that I am the one who holding this cup, but I forget this cup already made to hold. Otherwise, I can't hold it.
Yeah.
You know. So that is the very important. That is the very important principle we have to understand.
Yeah.
And because most of time we think, oh, I am the one who experience, but it already built to experience to someone. So once we are capable to understand, because the Dharma is bringing that connection and that experience to be with that, rather than developing the self-centered mind. So in that way, person capable to understand how things come to be as they are. So once the person have that wisdom, that person find the freedom itself. It is not freedom is not a kind of like something that you can gain. So this is a very wrong idea. It's arising. So only thing is you have to build up the ground to arise it. So in that way, if the whoever practice that, whatever the listening or the chanting or the reciting or the meditation or reflecting, so whatever the way the person practice, rather than hold it to I am doing this, and if the person let go that and completely be with the practice, then it create the ground to arise from the ground. and that will allow that person to experience something. So mostly it is important thing that what we have to understand, and rather than separating this is me, and if the person capable to build up the connection, that connection itself build up the balance, and through that balance it bring the understanding. I think this sutras and try to develop it, that explain it in many whoever practice. I think it is very important, especially nowadays, rather than following the person or the monk or the guru or the teacher or the certain kind of method, trying to be open from inside will allow that person to find the freedom.
Amazing. I think Bante Shantasobana, you have shared with us a lot of insights and how to look at the liberation, the vimukti, and I really love the story you told us about the evergreen, the field, and it reminds me of a phrase. You know, of course, everybody is wanting to have freedom. The freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of you know anything. So, but you could have freedom of something, but you have no freedom from that. There's a big difference. I think here in the sutta, uh, uh, the way I understand, Buddha is teaching five ways or bases or opportunities or grounds how we can gain freedom from. Like I think the freedom from is already clear, the suffering, and we know what causes suffering. So to alleviate the causes of suffering or to remove the causes of suffering completely, and here are five ways to practice it. So we can talk about it in detail. We see Venerable Trudeau raised his hand. He's from Florida. Venerable Trudeau, what's in your mind?
Thank you. Salutations to all the venerable sirs who are present. Thank you for having me. I don't know. The lighting in here makes me look really like strict, and you know, I just noticed that on my.
Oh, you're looking great. You're looking great. Don't worry.
it 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 actually leads to the first thing I want to say is, and I do a lot of experiments on my students to measure how well we monks can deliver the Dhamma in a way best for everyone to understand, comprehend. And part of my experiment one day, I had my students listen to other monks around the world, Bhikkhu Bodhi being one of them, Venerable Jayasaro, Venerable Sarana, Nyana Moli, to name a few, Ajahn Brahm. And one thing I noticed is that they were not able, or they were less likely to separate the message from the messenger. In Thailand, we use a fan in front of us so that it hides the personality of the monk, and thus you only hear the Dhamma and not necessarily the personality of the monk, like how I appeared in the beginning of this session. And you know, we judge, don't we? We judge other people based on age and where people are from, and just we do that. Our mind tends to shift. Therefore, the absorption, the download of the Dhamma becomes not as efficient. Not as efficient. It is my encouragement for people to be diligent. Let me go back to the sutta here in the 3 words that it describes. That if a mendicant stays diligent, keen, and resolute, I think everyone knows what diligent means. It means just to continue with it, consistency, right? Don't be lazy. When we look up the definition of keen, keen actually has multiple definitions here. It means an adjective on dictionary.com, finely sharpened as an edge, so shaped as to or pierce substances readily, sharp piercing, characterized by strength and distinctness of perception, sensitive or responsive, having showing great mental penetration, intense or feeling or desire. The other thing is a lot of students ask, well, in Buddhism, is it that I don't need to desire everything? What is desire? What is the middle way of definition of desire? A lot of us can get too analytical when it comes to certain words. That's why the monastic order is here to explain in simple details for all of you so that you all don't attach on to certain meanings to its extreme form. The desire for an appropriate amount of desire for enlightenment, liberation, true inner freedom, peace, liberation is one of the best desires that you can have for now, for a short time, temporarily. One must let everything go through time. You know, initially on the path, your initial path, you're trying to come to understand, comprehend. However, along the path and towards in the middle of it and towards the end of it, when your comprehension becomes more complete, you will realize how easy it is to let go and no longer clinging on to conventional definitions. Things will become a lot more simpler. So therefore, when we look up definitions, we have to really try to understand what is it that the Buddha is trying to say when he says diligent, keen, and of course, per word, right? You can see there's multiple sub-definitions and definitions underneath that. When we look at resolute, it says firmly resolved or determined, set in purpose or opinion, characterized by firmness and determination as the temper, spirit, actions. So I emphasize all three of those, diligence, keen, and resolute, to have sheer determination. When in doubt of the Dhamma, details of the Dhamma, reach out for clarifications. This is one of the best path, I believe, I feel. And you know, all of us here have given up. When you profile, some of us were once married, some of us once had high-paying jobs. A lot of Dhamma teachers have MD, PhDs, PsyDs, MSCDs, DDS, DMDs, degrees. You know, one must ask, how come you gave it up? How come you renounced, giving up all worldly pleasures, giving up everything, money, status, cars, all the finer things in life, all for 3 robes and an alms bowl? Because we were diligent, we were keen, and we made a determination to resolve. And that we saw suffering clearly, the first noble truth, the second noble truth, and the third noble truth. And as I've always said, somewhere down the line, hopefully you choose a good, qualifying, authentic, experienced teacher. Trust the teacher and trust the process. And once you do that, you start to see how everything falls into place, how it becomes true. And so inspired by it that these suttas sing, they really sing to your ear. The feeling inspired joy springs up. Being joyful, rapture springs up. When the mind is full of rapture, the body becomes tranquil. The body becomes tranquil. How many of us pay close attention to Gaya Nupassana? How many of us pay really close attention the way how your body is communicating with you? Are you sleeping well? when attending to nature's call, do you pay attention when nature is calling? That means going to the bathroom. Your body's telling you, is giving you clues that it is stressful right now. Years ago, we were stressed out because lions and elephants ran after us in the forest. That was real stress. Now we stress over 30-year mortgage bills and struggling to make ends meet. So the middle way helps you readjust. But if you miss some of these sentences here that the Buddha laid out, the world's first physician in regards to the body becoming tranquil, you sleep well at night. You sleep well at night. When the body is tranquil, one feels bliss. And when blissful, the mind becomes immersed in samadhi. And just back up a little bit, right? When we get too far into just two sentences can have some of us thinking for a week. So if you back up a little bit and see the dependent origination of your life and how it got to the point where you can't sleep, you're not doing well in home, school, or work, you're not getting along with people, we're agitated, we're not digesting food, we can't attend to nature's call. This is why in clinical psychology we ask, are you sleeping well? Are you eating well? And then also, how is your sex life, right? Humans gotta have that. And when all three of those are not going well in your life, time to come back to the Dhamma and take it slow and have these sentences remind you, every day you should put these, your room should be littered with messages like this: rapture, joy, inspiration, liberation, and freedom. Slowly, these words have power about your intentions. What are your intentions today? Well, my intention is to ensure my own peace. And every step I take today out of this door will be peaceful. I will speak nice and kindly to others. I will try to purify my mind. All these steps will lead me to rapture, I believe. I have true faith, unshakable faith, and conviction. It is what I tell myself every single day. And so that's all we can do, right? As monastics here, is to inspire all of you to have the same intention, idea, sheer determination. We all, like all of you, to experience that rapture and joy during meditation. And so I'd like to conclude my contributions, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Venerable Trudeau, for sharing your insights, and I think this is how we should be, about being mindful of like we are talking about the liberation and etc. And so, what are the obstacles? What are the hindrances toward the experience of liberation of freedom, and what can be done? What are our weaknesses, and do we acknowledge our own weaknesses? And if that's so, to remove all the weaknesses, what can we do, and what are the ways? And I think here in this sutta, Vimuttayatana Sutta, we find some interesting ways to remove the weaknesses and to gain the liberation from these weaknesses. I really love how you explain those three words, on the what we call the diligent, the diligent, keen, resolute, and in fact, English word translation could give something else, but when you read that in Pali, the original words used by the Buddha, like appamata. Appamata is like, not delaying. You have to do it right now. And the atapi, this all this is keen. The real meaning of atapi is burning, actually. So you have to burn whatever the weaknesses, or whatever causing the us to lose the freedom. And by that, we cannot give up. We have to keep going. So these are very interesting words that anyone could have. So I thank you for touching on those three words. Now we have Bante Mystica Kamalasuri raised his hand. And actually, I was really looking forward to listening to you, Bante Kamalasuri, and how you look at this. Bante Kamalasuri from Minnesota.
Thank you for everyone. I think everybody explained nicely it. Then I also like to keep my garden in green, but I keep all of the brown leaves for the fertilizer in the garden. Because they also useful for us again. However, here actually this sutta was familiar to me because of my history, personal history. It was helpful for me to understand something, which was the own ideas in the societies and which given to us. Especially, however, within the sutra, we can understand our ancestors who develop the monastic life and systems. They have based this sutra because all of the monk, as a monk, we know what we practice in monasteries, what we learn, what we practice, and what we continue. The listening to Dhamma, teaching Dhamma, giving the Dhamma to others, and chanting or recite, and review the Dhamma, and practice a special method or technique of meditation. That is the thing we do in our life in monastery, whole life in the monastery. Everywhere, I think all of the monks do that. So this sutra very important for the monastic life and monastic system, the way of the monastic life. And not only that, the lay people also, but they also have to do same thing here. And there was controversial idea when we were young. Mostly we heard that without understanding or attaining or experience nirvana, if anyone goes to teach Dhamma, that is not practical. Yeah, we heard that. Then I also was very confused about that. Then I also was thinking about that, what we should do that. Is it a correct or it is true like that? But when I say this sutra, in this sutra mention, the teaching Dhamma also one practice or one kind of meditation it is. Yeah, teaching Dhamma also. Then after that, I understood in Milinda Panya, the Nagasena, when Nagasena also attained to Nirvana, when he was giving talk to someone. Yeah, so therefore the giving Dhamma talks means it also kind of meditation or kind of bhavana. It is the kind of our practice. Yeah. So that is the important thing I learned from this sutta. What we do, this is the theory actually. This is the concept paper for the monastic life. That is the thing I wanted to add. And I appreciate all of other explanations and contributions.
Yeah, thank you, Bante Kamlasri. In fact, I was also thinking about it. Even I have to acknowledge the fact that whatever I have learned so far, that something actually compelled me to go on this path. As you know, one of our teachers, Bante Mudita, in mid-90s, our temple in Mississauga, in Toronto, had a meditation class, and there was a monk. You know that monk, Mahavate Kamalsri Hamdru. He used to run that, and suddenly he left for Australia, and there was no one else to do this. And Bhante Mudita just called me. He said, Saranapala, go and do the meditation session. So there were people. I had no clue what to say, what to do, and there was about 15 or 16 people, and so now I cannot say no to my teacher. So I was shaking, and then I sat on the meditation cushion. Although I sat there, I told the people, I don't know what to say. Let us just meditate. Let's just breathe. And those days I had a struggle with English too. And although I had something to tell people, but I didn't know how to express myself. So I just simply said, let's meditate. As I was sitting there for meditation, I lost my balance. I felt like the world is spinning around me. so so somehow I managed to survive for 1 hour. and and then after that, he said, from today, you have to conduct this weekly session. Now what to do? Now I told myself, now I have no way to get out of this but to run this weekly session. Then for a week, I would prepare for this session for a week. To find the right word, what to teach, what to share, what the story to tell, and the English words, and etc., etc. And guess what? The meditation session I started in 1995. I still continue to do it even now, 28 years. So this meditation session actually made me to do more research, to read more, to reflect more, contemplate more, and I'm very grateful for that. And even as Bhante Kamalsrasi said, now without experiencing nirvana or the free, now how can you teach people? I was also confused by then, and then so I was searching for some ways to understand this much better. And then I happened to read this sutta. So this sutta gave me some relief. Yeah, although you don't teach, but although you haven't experienced nirvana, but by teaching meditation, teaching some dhamma, it would help you to get there slowly. So this is the work in progress, I guess, for all of us, and it's the same thing for all of us, I guess. Bante Pesala raised his hand. He's all the way from Sri Lanka. You woke up early in the morning, 3:30. In fact, thank you, Bante Pesala, for recommending me to take this sutta for discussion. So, Bante Pesala, what's in your mind?
Terwan Sarnai Bante, I hope you all can hear me.
Yeah, very clear.
First of all, I pay my homage to all Bantes. And Bante, I thought to discuss the Sutra Bante. This is very important Sutra. Why? Because lots of people, even in Buddhist monks and as well as the lay people also, they think that to gaining samadhi and gaining liberation from the Buddhism, they must do the meditation. After they must to go to a jungle and without by being separating from the people, and they think to just to meditate. That is the only way to gain samadhi. But Bhante, in Buddhism, the term samadhi is totally different. It's totally different from the other samadhis. Like in the other dispensations, other teachings, they were having samadhi, and those samadhi and this Buddha samadhi, there are significant differences. So that's why in the first it say we can gain samadhi. I mean, the important thing is to the as followers we must have the interest. Like that's why the word Bhante clearly explained about appamattassa, atapino, pahittattassa. Those words mean we must have the interest. So to have that interest, we must first understand about the Four Noble Truths. So it say that atta patisangvedi, dhamma patisangvedi means that we are always we need to understand about the Four Noble Truths. Then he knows the reality of the world, and then if he wants to gain samadhi out of these 5 ways, he can gain samadhi at any one of them. Like in the first incident, it say sattha dhamman desiti anyatarowa garuttahaniyo sabbrahmachari. That means it has to be even the Buddha or the the respectable teacher, like the Buddha, I mean like the enlightened one. From them we can hear the Dhamma. When we listening Dhamma, we can gain samadhi and we can have the deliverance. The deliverance means there are 2 types of deliverance. That is called, one is Cheto Mukti. That means it talk about the non-return anagami result. And the other deliverance is known as Panya, that is known as the Arhat Pala. So that can be achieved even when listening Dhamma. And the preaching the Dhamma, at that time also he can gain that deliverance. And thirdly, when we reciting the Dhamma, and we can have that pleasure, samadhi, and clearly Bhante explained in the earlier. So they can have that samadhi even when reciting the Dhamma. And fourth, it says Bhante, fourth is an important factor that yata sutang yata pariyattam dhammam anuvitakkheti anuvicarayati manasanu pekkeheti. That means the Dhamma we hear, we must hear about the Four Noble Truth, and we have to scrutinize, and we have to consider carefully, and we have to examine or inspect closely. That means we are doing vipassana. When we are doing vipassana, we gain the samadhi. That's the 4th step. And finally, the 5th one, it says normally samadhi nimittang mean there are 40 subjects of samadhi kammattana, samatha kammattana. So while just meditating in the like the others, just doing samatha kamatahan and enhance the samadhi, and they can convert that samadhi into wisdom by just doing vipassana. That's why it said in the at the last it said under 5th one, sumanisikatang supadharitang suppatividdhaya panyaya. That means carefully thinking and well considered, thoroughly understood by the wisdom, then they can have the deliverance. So the point is that people, lots of even Buddhist followers, they know that there is something with the Buddha's teaching, but since we are so much busy, and since we have so much commitments, we have no chance to practice. It's a wrong kind of perception, Bhante. Everyone, if we know the value, we don't need to become monks, and we don't need to become go to the forest monasteries. At anywhere we can practice Dhamma. That's what I want to add, Bhante.
Yeah, thank you, Venerable Bhante Pesala. And of course, meditation is the means to is the way to experience samadhi, to cultivate samadhi. And for that, of course, we have to practice. This is also in line with how Buddha's teachings of Dhamma can be practiced in 3 steps, as we all know: pariyatti, patipatti, pativeda. Pariyatti means to learn, patipatti means to practice, and pativeda means to realize. So now, by doing this bi-weekly discussion, even by teaching, by reciting, by chanting, or even rehearsing and meditating, and all these are part of these 3 steps. And here, by teaching, that's why I think our teachers always emphasized on doing the daily chanting. We all know every day we had to get up early in the morning. We had to do chanting of the sutras and Chaturaraka Bhavana, Buddhanusati, Mettanusati, Asubhanusati, Marananusati. These also meditation practices that we are chanting or reciting, and Karinametta Sutta that we chant every day, like whenever the Pirit chanting we do, and whenever we are teaching, all these are ways of practicing Dhamma daily. And without the practice, the nothing can be realized. I think this is the most important thing. That's why we need to be very keen on the practice. We have to, as you said, we have to be interested in doing this, finding liberation. This is how I think we can prevent from the defilements, and this is how we can stop defilements arising. This is how we can cultivate the opposite of the defilements, the positive emotions. And that's how it would bring liberation to us. I think this is very interesting topic that we are discussing today. Bante Trudell, you raised your hand again. You have more insights to share with us. Bante Trudell from Florida.
Yes, thank you. Oh, by the way, Venerable Pesala really inspires me. He recently gave talks on the Buddhist insight, and I always get a kick when the monastics use Pali, citing the Pali, because I'm not good at it. So it makes me go back and write even more so I can remember, so I can recite it. Everyone knows that I'm not a monk that is considered a sutta monk, right? A monk that studies the sutta and break it down. That's why we have these biweekly. I would consider myself a Buddhist psychotherapist because I do a lot of clinical work with people, which leads to this contributions about, yeah. So we monks do chant every morning. It's a way of reciting and mindful of the Dhamma. And the lay people who are watching, well, they're like, well, how do we get closer to the Dhamma? How do we have these opportunities for freedom? Since that is the Dhamma talk for today. And some of the things, some of the steps that a person can take towards opportunities for freedom is, you know, maybe some viewers have not gone back to the monasteries, your local monasteries. Maybe some of the viewers here today haven't reached out to a wise friend, the good friend on the path, the Kalyana Mitta. So you find people and you're not afraid to reach out, go to monasteries, local monasteries, not afraid to reach out to any of us monastics and ask us how do I come back to the Dhamma? You know, I've taken a couple of months or a couple of years and haven't kept the precept. And so come back to it, come back to the basics. Of course, the precept is something that we always emphasize, and bi-weekly talks like this also serves as reminders. It's no different than people going to church every Sunday, right? When they remind you to to forgive and ask for forgiveness. Well, every time when you tune in to us, we would remind you to keep the precept and to be vigilant of the hindrances, which is someone wrote on here earlier. Being aware of that, being aware of the 7 factors of enlightenment. So these are some of the tiny steps that you could take as it brings you closer to the opportunities for freedom. You know, it's the baby steps, but it all adds up to the big and grand picture towards the end. And all of us look forward to that. So I like to yield the floor back to everyone else, but thank you for having me again.
Yeah, thank you. And I said thank you for acknowledging the fact that how you get inspired by Bante Pesala when he uses Pali. That's how, you know, I think even there are a lot of people, even in when you use the Pali phrases, sutras or God or verses, it's like we are connecting our teaching to the original words used by the Buddha. And so if you know Pali, it gives you better understanding. It gives you positive enforcement. You're actually speaking the truth. So, Bante Shanta Sobana from Los Angeles, please share with us more insights.
Yes, thank you very much giving me this opportunity again. I want to add a little bit because if anyone like to practice, because most of time what we do, and we always tell them to mostly use this all 5 methods. Listen, it not just only practice meditation, listening to Dhamma in different ways, and at the same time whenever if you have a friend and if you can share that. Sometimes I do it for my new students whoever come here. First I teach them how to do, and then I ask, okay, now you teach me. Then I can understand if he get it that very clearly. And another thing is this reciting. It is a very important, because sometimes as example, like causation or the cause and effect or the paticca samuppada, sometimes when people can't understand it, rather than going to the very deeper meaning, first if they try to recite it, and by the time it become very familiar for them, then later they are capable to get the meaning. So that is another way that they can practice. And reflecting themselves is a very important thing. Like as example, the boxing, before they go into the meet, they do shadow boxing. So that means themselves they're reflecting. See, that's the same thing. You know, what we learn, what we study, what we practice, if we reflect on with the Dhamma, it becomes very clear. So then how this can develop the liberation, that is very important to know. Because when it comes to Theravada Buddhist tradition, we have to give our utmost respect to all our past venerable masters, because they are mapping this and they are preserve this everything, and they protect this because there is a reason behind. Because if anyone want to follow the Dhamma, and still it is available. And so in this way, that especially in the Theravada tradition, that if anyone want to attain to the liberation, the path is still very clear. So when it comes to that, especially when in the Visuddhi Magga, there is a way that listening and at the same time thinking and cultivating Sutta-me jnana, Chinta-me jnana, and Bhavana-me jnana. So this 5 method, listening to Dhamma and teaching the Dhamma, reflecting the Dhamma, and reciting the Dhamma, meditation, all these 5 method included to that 3 wisdom path. So in that way, if anyone capable to go into this how the person gain the liberation or the freedom, how the shift happen. Because most of time we talking to ourselves, that our Lilliput inside our head keep talking to us. we have more conversation ourselves. But now, rather than listening to us, we listening to the Dhamma. Rather than just we teaching to ourselves, we start to teach the Dhamma, not what our head. We teach the Dhamma, and at the same time recite the Dhamma and reflect the Dhamma. And so in that way, what happened? It break down that mental proliferation or the our inner the mental that the thoughts or the ideas keep going inside us. In that way, we hold it to, we grasping to the Dhamma. In that way, in the very first level, we can develop the very the ground of renunciation, in which the very first level, what happened, the thought pattern. Now we go with the Dhamma. Because of that, our inner defilement displays. So in that displacement, mind become little bit free. And when we accelerate the pattern to be with the Dhamma little by little, our inner or defilement start to suppress. And by the time we are capable to uproot it, So in that way, little by little, we transform from our own inner mind to the Dhamma. In case if the person capable to completely transform from their own inner point of view to the Dhamma, so in that way, that person completely give up the idea of self-centered mind or the I am. So in that way, that person has ability to gain the freedom. So that is another, the way that I want to bring that whoever listen this, how this sutra can lead us to liberation.
Yeah, and I think that's the best way to explain it. And also, as I was listening to you, see, that is the beauty of listening to one of the. I have to acknowledge the fact, by conducting this bi-weekly sutra discussion, I have learned so much from all of you, because when we read the sutra, let's say you have a different way of understanding. You have a way of perceiving certain things, and you have your own experiences. You have your own stories. So when I listen to your version of the story, the way you see, the way you understand, the way you think, that actually inspires me and motivates me. And so that's why I keep conducting this bi-weekly sutra discussion with all of you. And I look forward to this. That's why first I send an email to all of them. I send a respectful reminder, and then I send a personal message to all of you. So because I want to learn from you, I want to get more inspiration, more motivation. So by listening to this, one thing that I realized that just now, modern days, let's say, nowadays, majority of the people may not be interested in nirvana, let's say, but majority of the people, I would say almost all global citizens are looking for some ways to overcome their own psychological, emotional struggles, issues like anxiety, stress, depression, pain, sadness, guilt, and fear. And if anyone who wants to gain freedom from these emotional struggles, and I think here are some ways to find freedom. Let's say if you're looking for stress relief or freedom from anxiety, depression, if you want to recover from deep depression, and if you want to recover from something difficult you're going through, maybe here's the way: listen to listen to a talk. And then, if not, just teach. If you know something, teaching is also healing. Listening is also healing. Reciting is also healing. Reflecting, meditating is also healing. And this healing comes from following these methods. And of course, there are people who have gone through some struggles, and somehow they found a way to overcome their own personal struggle. And then after recovering, they tell their story. Telling the story is also gives more empowerment, more inspiration, more motivation to those people who are also going through the same thing. You know, and so maybe the best way is to listen, to teach, to recite. I think when you recite something, even how even Hinduism they say recite this Om, and in Japanese one Zen branch they talk about uh, 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 like in Mahayana Buddhist tradition, they say Namo Amitabha, Namo Amitabha, Namo Amitabha. And this recitation, even like, I know Ajahn Chah also encourages the students to use a mantra, like a word. If you think your mind is wandering all over the places and more thoughts are popping up, then in addition to breathing, use a word Buddho, recite Buddho all the time. So that is the way of inviting the Buddha quality, calmness in your mind and heart. So I think this sutta, Vimutta, I think somebody who is watching this program on YouTube Live, that person wants to know the name of the sutta. It's called the Vimutti Ayatana Sutta. And this Vimutti Ayatana Sutta can be found and read in the Anguttara Nikaya in the category of the five. And also you can Google actually. If you really want to read the translation, Google the sutta. And so then it will, I know there are a lot of people who are appreciating today's discussion. And there's one person on YouTube who said, the bodhisattva path is a way to liberation. Well, Mahayana Buddhist tradition also emphasizes on that, adopting the bodhisattva ideal. And the whole purpose of the bodhisattva is to liberate all sentient beings from the samsara, the cycle of life. So whatever way you think is good for you, practice that for the liberation. But here, the Buddha is teaching us in this sutta the 5 grounds or 5 opportunities or 5 ways how to gain liberation from your own struggles. Let's say if you think you are going through so much problems, so many problems, sufferings, pains, or of course anxiety, stress, depression, and try practicing this, see whether it helps or not. And in fact, I know for a fact that by conducting these weekly meditation sessions for years, there are so many people who benefited from this. Even there are people who look forward to Wednesday to listen to the Dhamma talk we gave. And there are people who look forward to this to come and meditate with the group. So this is a ground and opportunity we create not only for us and for everyone who is seeking a way out of their own problem. So I highly recommend our audience and our friends to read this sutta over and over again, and it will, I'm very positive, it will give you more empowerment, more inspiration, more motivation, and this will help you to gain liberation from your own struggles. So we have come to the end of today's bi-weekly sutra discussion. And so let us, of course, I'm very grateful to all the venerable monks for joining the discussion to share your insight, your wisdom with our audience. And we are together, we are in the same boat, and we are helping so many people through this discussion. And in fact, I see some comments on Facebook and YouTube how they are greatly appreciating your story, your words. You're motivating them, you're inspiring them. In a way, this is also bringing liberation to people, at least for 1.5 hours through this Zoom discussion. So I'm very grateful to you. And I'm also very grateful to our lay followers who join on the Zoom platform from different countries, and also to our friends who are watching this program on Zoom and the Facebook and YouTube Live. And so simply grateful to have all of you. We need to continue this journey together for our own emotional and spiritual well-being. So let us wind this up by reciting the Ovada Patimokkha verses. And today, we don't have Venerable Saranapal from Vancouver to recite this. He's gone, and I'm wondering whether anyone who would like to recite this. Otherwise, I'm going to do it.
Okay, Bante, I can do it, Bante.
Okay, please, Venerable Pesala from Sri Lanka, please recite the Ovada Patimokkha verses.
Sabba papassa akaranang kusalassa upasampada sacitta pariyodapanang etang buddhana sasanang kanti paramang tapotitikha Nibbanang paramang vadanti buddha nahi pabbajito paropaghati samano hoti parang vihethayanto anupavado anupaghato pati mokhecha sangvaro mattanyutacha bhattasmin පන්තංච සයනාසනං අධිචිත්තේච ආයෝගෝ ඒතං බුද්ධාන සාසනන්ති.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Venerable Pesula, for reciting over the Patimokkha verses beautifully. And once again, I'm very grateful to all of you. So, by the grace and power of all these blessings of the Noble Triple Gem, the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, may you all be well, happy, and peaceful. May you all continue to be blessed with good health, safety, happiness, peace of mind. May Deva, celestial beings, continue to protect and guard all of you with the divine blessings for your health and safety. Sabbe Satta Bhavantu Sukhitatta. May all sentient beings be well, happy, and peaceful. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks' time. Until then, be well. Good night from Canada. Bye-bye.